There were few things in the world that could rattle Celeste Wexler, daughter of a ruthless oil magnate, now CEO of Wexler Industries, and infamously cold in every boardroom she walked into. Billionaire before the age of 31, her name sent a chill down Wall Street spines. Her Manhattan penthouse on the 83rd floor of the Wexler building was known as her fortress, a place where assistants tiptoed, chefs whispered, and the air itself seemed to obey her silence. But tonight, something she never expected was about to shake her. It began with a decision made half out of boredom and half out of suspicion. Celeste had noticed the new maid, Isadora. Timid, quiet, always avoiding eye contact, disappearing into corners like a shadow. She had only been working there for a month, and yet, Celeste found herself noticing her more than she should. The girl moved like she was afraid to exist. But she had hands that lingered on silk, fingers that straightened objects with reverence, and eyes, when they dared to look up, that held something fragile, burning. Celeste wasn't used to curiosity. Not about people. And yet, tonight, she found herself reclined on the velvet chaise in her private library, silk robe draped over one shoulder, eyes closed, not truly sleeping, but letting her breathing slow, letting her body become still. A test. Isadora was scheduled to clean the room. Celeste had instructed the rest of the staff to leave early. The penthouse would be empty except for them. She wanted to know. She had to know. Why did this girl stir something so annoyingly persistent in her chest? Something that no other woman, no other conquest, had managed to spark in years? The clock on the wall ticked past 11. Then she heard it, the soft chime of the elevator, the faintest creak of the door opening. Footsteps. Hesitant. Light. A pause. Then movement. Isadora entered the library. Celeste could feel her presence like static in the air. She didn't open her eyes. Didn't move. Her heart beat slower. More shallow. She expected the girl to start dusting. Instead, the silence dragged. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then a slow exhale. Isadora moved closer. The sound of a cloth being unwrapped. The scent of lavender polish. She began with the shelves. But her hands trembled. Celeste noticed it. Could feel it. Each object she touched was handled as if it might burn her. But still she worked. And then, Isadora spoke. Softly. As if to herself. "You're not what they say you are," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the ticking clock. Celeste's blood ran cold. Her mind sharpened like a blade. She kept still. Didn't breathe too loud. "They say you don't feel anything," Isadora continued, dusting a glass sculpture on the mantel. "But I see it. I see how you look at the city, like it's not enough. Like it never will be." Celeste's fingers twitched, just a fraction, but Isadora didn't notice. "I wish I could tell you," she whispered, and her voice cracked, "how beautiful you are when you think no one's watching." Celeste's breath caught. Isadora was still on the far side of the room, facing away. She had no idea Celeste was hearing every word. No idea her heart was pounding like a war drum against her ribs. Then, Isadora stepped back, took a shaky breath. She didn't come closer. She didn't dare. She simply gathered her cloth, looked once, longer than she should have, at Celeste's still form, and turned away. She left the library as quietly as she had come. The door clicked shut behind her, and Celeste, alone now in the silence, opened her eyes. Slowly, wide, shaken. Something inside her had shifted, and she didn't yet understand what. But she knew one thing. She would never see Isadora the same way again. Celeste didn't sleep that night. Not because of the markets in Shanghai or the stack of reports waiting for her on the dining table. Not even because her phone buzzed with a dozen missed calls from board members wanting her signature on another billion-dollar acquisition. None of it mattered. Not now. Not after what she heard. She had replayed Isadora's voice in her mind at least 50 times. The softness of her words, the heartbreak woven into every syllable. "I wish I could tell you." It echoed like a secret never meant to be heard. A secret that now lived in Celeste's veins, in her breath, in the cold space between her ribs. She stood barefoot in front of the massive glass wall overlooking the city, wearing nothing but a silk nightgown and a mind in chaos. The sun had already started to rise, diluted orange light spilling into the penthouse, kissing the marble floors with a kind of warmth Celeste had always ignored. But today, it pressed against her skin like a reminder that something had shifted, that she had been seen, truly seen. She should have called HR, should have transferred the girl, should have taken control of the situation before it spun further into something dangerous. But she didn't. She couldn't. Instead, she waited. And when the clock neared noon and the staff returned, Celeste watched for her. She had never done that before, never noticed when someone entered a room. But when Isadora stepped out of the private elevator with her hair tied up in a loose bun, wearing her standard gray uniform and carrying a small caddy of supplies, Celeste's entire body went still. Isadora paused at the threshold of the hallway. Her eyes flicked briefly in Celeste's direction, only for a second, then dropped. Always downward, always hiding. But now Celeste knew better. Behind those downcast lashes was a girl who saw more than she ever should, and had said more than she ever meant to. Isadora, Celeste said, her voice sharper than intended. The girl froze. Yes, Miss Wexler, she answered, not lifting her gaze. Celeste hated how formal it sounded now. How small. Come with me. She turned without another word and walked toward the east wing. Her heels clicked over the stone floors like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. Isadora followed in silence. They entered the sunroom, a space rarely used, filled with indoor plants, a skylight overhead, and a white piano no one played. Celeste turned and faced her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Have you worked in homes like this before? Celeste asked. The question was meaningless. She didn't care about the answer. She just needed to hear Isadora speak again. Not this kind of home, Isadora replied softly. Her hands gripped the handle of her cleaning tray a little tighter. Celeste stepped closer. Not enough to invade. Just enough to watch her reaction. What kind of home is this, then? Isadora hesitated. Cold, she said before she could stop herself. Her eyes widened slightly, afraid she'd crossed a line. Celeste blinked. Is that what they say about me? That I'm cold? Isadora opened her mouth, then closed it. She swallowed. I don't listen to what people say. No. Celeste tilted her head. Not even when they say I don't feel anything? Isadora flinched. Just barely. But it was enough. Celeste's voice softened. Strange. Because someone said exactly that last night. The tray slipped slightly in Isadora's hands. Her eyes darted to the floor. I didn't mean... You were in the library, Celeste interrupted, tone calm but laced with steel. Weren't you? Isadora's voice was barely a whisper. I was just cleaning and talking. Celeste stepped closer. To yourself? Isadora's breath caught. She was trembling now. I didn't know you were awake. I wasn't, Celeste lied. But the security footage has sound. Isadora's face went pale. She looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor. I'm sorry, she breathed, panic rising in her throat. I didn't mean any of it. I was just tired and you didn't mean it? Celeste cut in, voice colder now. You didn't mean what you said about me? Silence. Isadora looked up. Just once. Eyes full of something raw and painful and unspoken. Then she dropped her gaze again. I shouldn't have said it. Celeste didn't respond. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of the antique clock in the corner. Then she stepped back. You're dismissed for today. Isadora's head snapped up. Miss Wexler, go home, Celeste said, turning her back. I don't want to see you until tomorrow. Isadora stood frozen for a heartbeat, then nodded and backed out of the room, nearly tripping on her own feet as she left. The door closed. Celeste stared at the piano. Her reflection in the glossy, white surface looked different now. Exposed. Angry. Confused. But mostly terrified. She hadn't frozen because of what Isadora had done. She had frozen because of what it did to her. And now, no matter how hard she tried, She couldn't unhear those words. Couldn't unsee the girl who had looked at her like she was human. Worthy of love. Worthy of something. The problem was, Celeste wasn't ready to admit she wanted that to be true. The following morning, Celeste arrived at her office 2 hours earlier than usual. Not because she had meetings, she didn't. Not because of deadlines, she met them all days ahead. She was simply restless. Everything felt misaligned. Her skin felt too tight. Her thoughts were too loud. Nothing grounded her anymore. Not the skyline from her window. Not the pristine order of her office. Not even the crisp silence of the elevator that carried her 83 floors into the sky. Isadora hadn't shown up yet. And though Celeste would rather walk barefoot over broken glass than admit it aloud, she noticed. She noticed every second that ticked by without hearing those light footsteps in the hallway. She noticed the absence of quiet humming, the soft drag of a cloth over marble, the faint scent of almond soap. She noticed the silence, because now she knew what it held, and she hated it. By noon, Celeste had reviewed the same report 3 times without retaining a single number. She dismissed her assistant with a clipped voice, stood by the window, and stared out into the glass jungle she ruled. The city was a mirror, sharp, glittering, and completely indifferent, just like she had been. Until a whisper in the dark cracked something open. When the elevator finally chimed at 12:14 p.m., Celeste's body stiffened before she could stop it. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. She could feel her. Isadora moved quietly, as always. But now, Celeste could hear her breath, soft, nervous, uneven. She could feel the tension that bloomed in the air like static before a storm. And still, she kept her back turned, pretending to study the skyline. "Miss Wexler?" Isadora's voice was careful, afraid. "I came to clean the sitting room and the terrace." "Do it," Celeste replied flatly. The girl hesitated, then moved past her, keeping a wide berth. Celeste turned just enough to watch from the corner of her eye. Isadora went to work quickly, hands-efficient movements practiced. But her shoulders were hunched, her eyes kept darting towards Celeste and away again, like she was trying to anticipate some punishment, some backlash that hadn't come yet. Celeste hated how that made her feel, like a monster she hadn't realized she'd become. And yet, she didn't speak, didn't soften. She couldn't. Power was a delicate thing. Once you gave someone the truth, they could use it against you. She had learned that at 15. The hard way. Isadora was wiping the edge of a side table when her sleeve brushed a glass sculpture. It fell. Celeste heard the sharp intake of breath just before the crash. Glass shattered across the hardwood floor, jagged and gleaming. Isadora froze. Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she stammered, panic blooming across her face. "It was an accident. I swear. I'll pay for it. I'll clean it. Stop," Celeste said, finally turning fully to face her. Isadora's hands trembled as she bent down to gather the shards. Celeste walked toward her slowly. "You'll cut yourself." "It's fine. I can handle it." "Stand up," Celeste ordered, quieter now. Isadora hesitated, then obeyed, hands still shaking. "I said stand up, not cry," Celeste said. And that's when she saw it. The tears weren't falling, not yet, but they were brimming, burning behind Isadora's lashes. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "I've ruined everything." Celeste stared at her. This girl, trembling in front of her, apologizing for breathing, for existing. And something inside her snapped. "It was a gift," Celeste said suddenly. "From someone I stopped loving a long time ago. You didn't ruin anything." Isadora blinked, startled. "Oh." The silence after that was too loud. Celeste looked down. A small cut on Isadora's palm had started to bleed. Nothing severe. Just a thin red line. But it was enough. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. "You're bleeding," she said, stepping closer. "It's fine, let me see." Celeste reached out and took her hand gently. Isadora froze. Her skin was soft. Too soft. Celeste held her hand like something fragile. And she hated how perfectly it fit in hers. "You shouldn't touch glass with bare hands," she murmured. "You'll get hurt." "I already did," Isadora said before she could stop herself. The words hovered between them. Celeste looked up. Their eyes met. And for the first time, Isadora didn't look away. Her chest rose and fell quickly. "I didn't mean to say that," she whispered. "Yes, you did," Celeste replied, her voice barely audible. "Just like you meant what you said the other night." Isadora pulled her hand back slowly, the air between them sparking like static. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice so quiet it almost disappeared. "Doing what?" "Looking at me like that." Celeste didn't answer. Because she didn't know. She only knew that the girl who had once been invisible to her now felt like the only real thing in her world. And it terrified her. Isadora backed away, grabbing her cleaning tray. "I should finish the terrace," she said, her voice trembling again. "I didn't mean to interrupt your day." "You didn't," Celeste said, but the girl was already gone, slipping through the door like a breath escaping lungs. Celeste remained in the center of the room, holding the air like it could explain something. She looked down at her hand. A tiny smear of Isadora's blood lingered on her fingers, and she didn't wipe it off. Not yet, because for the first time in a long time, she felt something warm, and real, and terrifying. She wanted more, but wanting was dangerous. Wanting had teeth, and Isadora had no idea what she was waking up inside her. No idea what a woman like Celeste Wexler became when desire turned into obsession. Celeste wasn't used to feeling off balance. Control had always been her armor, her weapon, her religion. She had built empires with a straight spine and a voice that never trembled. Her name signed deals before she even walked into the room. But now, with a single girl brushing past her world like a shadow, everything she thought unshakable had begun to tremble. And she hated it. Except she didn't. Not really. What she hated was the ache in her chest when Isadora wasn't in the room. The strange stillness that followed the girl's footsteps like a scent that lingered on silk. She hated remembering the warmth of that small hand in hers. The smear of blood on her fingers she didn't clean off until long after Isadora had gone. And most of all, she hated knowing she could command armies and yet had no idea what to do with this girl who looked at her like she wasn't monstrous. The next morning, Celeste arrived late on purpose. She lingered in her bedroom longer than usual, watching her own reflection as she brushed her hair, slower than necessary. By the time she descended into the heart of the penthouse, she heard voices in the kitchen, staff preparing lunch, plates clinking, footsteps echoing across marble. And then she heard it. A laugh. Soft. Hesitant. But undeniably Isadora's. It was the kind of sound that wrapped around you before you even realized it had settled into your chest. Celeste paused in the hallway. That laugh had no business being so beautiful. She stood there, hidden just beyond the archway, listening. Isadora was talking to Marisol, the chef. They were laughing over something ridiculous. Apparently, someone had tried to make a soufflé explode in one of the staff cooking challenges downstairs. The moment was so normal, so painfully ordinary, it made Celeste ache. Isadora's voice was warmer here. More alive. Like the version of her Celeste had heard that night in the library was only one shade of a much deeper, much more colorful soul. And somehow, Celeste hated that she wasn't part of that world. Hated that the girl who had seen something in her now smiled at others like they mattered too. She stepped into the kitchen without warning. Silence snapped over the room like a whip. Everyone went stiff. Marisol gave a small nod and excused herself with a muttered, "Miss Wexler." Isadora, for her part, didn't move. But her back straightened, and her hands folded together in front of her like she was bracing for impact. "You're laughing," Celeste said, her voice cool. "It's loud, isn't it?" Isadora replied before she could stop herself. Celeste raised an eyebrow. "Careful." That almost sounded like attitude. "I didn't mean—" "Relax," Celeste interrupted, stepping past her and pouring herself a glass of water at the sink, though there were staff for that. She didn't know why she did it. Maybe just to feel something ordinary. maybe to see if her hands would stop shaking. I was just surprised, she added. You seem different today. Isadora hesitated, then spoke with quiet honesty. I don't know how I'm supposed to be anymore. Celeste looked over her shoulder. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, neither of them breathed. Then Celeste turned fully to face her. Come with me. No explanation. No room for protest. Just a command. Isadora followed. She always did. Celeste led her to the private gallery on the lower level, walls lined with original works, from brutalist sculptures to minimalist canvases that whispered in soft strokes. The room smelled of varnish and silence. No one else ever came here, not even the staff. Celeste stood in the center, arms crossed. Tell me what you see, she said, gesturing toward the nearest piece, a jagged sculpture made of rusted steel and melted glass. Isadora blinked. Why? Because I'm asking. Isadora stepped closer, slowly, hesitant. She studied the piece. It looks like something that was destroyed and forced back together, but not in the right shape, just enough to keep standing. Celeste said nothing. Her throat tightened. Isadora turned. I'm not sure that's what the artist intended. It doesn't matter what they intended, Celeste replied. It matters what you see. Another silence. Then Isadora dared to ask, why me? Celeste didn't answer right away. She walked closer instead, until the space between them thinned to something fragile. Because I haven't stopped thinking about what you said, she said finally, her voice low. And I don't understand why. Isadora looked away. You weren't meant to hear it. But I did. And now? Isadora whispered. What happens now? Celeste reached out. Her hand brushed a loose strand of hair behind Isadora's ear, so gently it made the girl flinch. But she didn't move away. Now, Celeste said softly, you keep working, and I keep watching you. Isadora looked up. Her eyes shimmered with 100 unsaid things. That's not fair, she said. No, Celeste agreed. It's not. Their faces were too close. Their breaths shared the same space. Isadora didn't move. Celeste leaned in just an inch more, and for one unbearable second, it felt like the world narrowed to this exact point. But then Celeste stopped, pulled back. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, loud and jarring. She didn't check it, just stepped back like nothing had happened. That's all, she said, voice sharp again. You can go. Isadora blinked like she'd just come out of a dream. She turned and walked away quickly, her steps uneven. Celeste stayed behind, her pulse pounding. She stood in front of the sculpture, staring at the shards of metal and glass, and wondered which part of herself she'd let shatter first. For the next 3 days, Celeste avoided the penthouse during daylight. She scheduled meetings she didn't need, accepted invitations she usually declined, lingered longer at her office just to delay the moment she might see her again. Isadora. That name had rooted itself in her mind like a splinter. No matter how she tried to drown it in finance reports or strategy calls, it kept pulsing underneath everything, throbbing just enough to make her restless. She hated how much power the girl had over her, without even trying. She hated how close she had come to crossing a line, how close she had leaned in, how ready her lips had been to fall into something she didn't fully understand. Celeste had kissed dozens of women before. Confident, beautiful, untouchable women who knew the rules. But Isadora wasn't like them. She wasn't a transaction. She wasn't someone to be conquered, consumed, and dismissed. She felt like a mirror Celeste hadn't asked for. And mirrors were dangerous when you were afraid of your own reflection. So she stayed away, until the silence became louder than the risk. On the 4th night, Celeste returned early. The penthouse was unusually quiet, lights dimmed, air soft. She left her coat by the door and walked barefoot down the corridor, something in her chest uncoiling with every step. She didn't know what she was looking for. She only knew who. And when she passed the hallway outside the library, she heard it. Not footsteps. Not movement. Music. A piano. Soft, slow, untrained, but undeniably real. The melody was uncertain, like someone figuring it out as they went. Celeste followed the sound without thinking. Her gallery, no one ever went there. But the piano was there, untouched for years. And now, as she stepped inside, she froze in the doorway. Isadora was sitting at it, her back to the room, head tilted slightly forward, fingers gliding hesitantly over the keys. She wore no shoes, just soft socks and her usual gray uniform, sleeves rolled slightly up. She didn't hear Celeste enter. Her shoulders moved gently with the rhythm, like she was letting the notes carry her somewhere far. Celeste stood there, watching, stunned. It was the most intimate thing she'd ever seen. This girl, alone in the quiet, playing a melody that wasn't perfect, but was undeniably hers. And suddenly, Celeste felt like an intruder, like a thief in her own home. She stepped back, accidentally nudged a book with her foot. The sound was soft, but not soft enough. Isadora jumped, fingers slipping off the keys. She turned, eyes wide, rising quickly from the bench. I'm sorry, she stammered. I didn't think anyone. This room is usually locked. It is, Celeste said, stepping forward slowly. How did you get in? The door was open, Isadora said, her voice barely audible. I wasn't going to touch anything. I saw the piano. Celeste's gaze didn't move from her. You play. Not well. It sounded honest. Isadora looked away. I only play when I need to stop thinking. About what? Silence. Isadora looked down. Everything. Celeste exhaled slowly. You don't have to go. Isadora blinked. I don't. Not yet. Celeste walked closer, stopping just a few feet away. Her voice dropped. Play something else. I don't, please. That word, from Celeste Wexler's mouth, sounded like velvet dipped in fire. Isadora hesitated, then sat slowly, fingers trembling as they hovered over the keys again. She began to play. Slower this time. A lullaby? No, something older. Sadder. The kind of song someone carries with them when they've run out of ways to say how much they've lost. Celeste closed her eyes. Let the music fill her like smoke. When it stopped, she opened them again. Where did you learn that? My mother, Isadora said, voice low. Before she got sick. Celeste's expression shifted. Barely. But something inside her pulled tight. Is she? Gone, Isadora finished. A long time ago. Celeste nodded slowly. I'm sorry. You don't have to say that. Why not? Because it's not your fault. Another silence. Then Celeste stepped forward and sat beside her on the piano bench. The movement was instinctive. No plan. No motive. Just gravity. Isadora didn't move. She kept her hands in her lap, breathing shallowly. Celeste didn't look at her. Just stared at the keys. No one's ever played this piano, she said. I bought it because I thought I should have one. It looks impressive. Classical. Sophisticated. And cold, Isadora said before she could stop herself. Celeste smiled. A real smile. Small. Sad. Everything I own is cold. Not everything. Celeste finally turned to her. Their eyes met again. But this time, there was no anger. No dominance. No distance. Just two people sitting too close to truths neither of them were ready to say. Isadora's voice trembled. Why are you being like this with me? I don't know, Celeste admitted. It scares me. What? You. Isadora's breath caught. I don't want to scare you. It's not that kind of fear, Celeste whispered. It's the kind that makes me want to run. Because if I don't, I might stay. They didn't touch. Not yet. But something passed between them. An energy. A vow. An ache. Isadora looked down. Her fingers brushed the keys again. If you stay, what happens to me? Celeste didn't answer. Because the truth was, she didn't know how to love someone without ruining them. She stood abruptly. You should go to bed, she said. Isadora rose too, slower. Thank you for letting me play. Celeste didn't turn around. Don't thank me for that. Then what should I thank you for? Celeste finally looked at her. And in her voice, for the first time, there was something almost fragile. For reminding me I'm still human. Isadora stood there, watching her, not knowing what to do with that confession. And Celeste, for the first time in years, felt naked in her own home. She walked away quickly, heart hammering. Because now the question wasn't what she felt. The question was how much longer she could hide it. Celeste buried herself in meetings, in mergers, in long-winded conference calls that bored her half to death. She said yes to boardroom appearances she normally delegated, spent entire days touring facilities she hadn't visited in years, accepted dinner invitations from foreign investors she didn't even like. Anything to stay out of the penthouse. Anything to silence the echo of piano notes and soft hands and trembling eyes that looked at her like she was more than a fortress made of ice and power. But even surrounded by numbers and voices, even with her schedule filled to the brim, it wasn't enough. Isadora lingered. In her mind, in her body, in the quietest corners of her day. It was absurd, irrational, dangerous, and completely out of her control. And yet, desire doesn't care about logic. Neither does longing. On the 7th day since that night in the gallery, Celeste returned home late. Past midnight. The city outside the windows glittered in silence. The penthouse was dark, save for the soft glow of the nightlights installed along the hallway floors. She dropped her bag on the console table and poured herself a glass of whiskey with more force than necessary. Her hands were tense, her chest tight. She hadn't seen Isadora all day. That was deliberate. But now, in the hush of the empty apartment, she craved her presence like a storm waiting to break. She didn't even realize she was walking until she found herself in the kitchen. Empty.
Clean.
Still smelling faintly of vanilla and soap. Her fingers tapped against the glass. Her mind raced. And then movement. From down the hall.
Soft.
Hesitant. Isadora appeared at the far end of the corridor, barefoot, holding a small basket of freshly folded linen. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw Celeste. "I thought you were out for the night," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I was." Celeste didn't move. Isadora hesitated. "I'll finish quickly. You don't have to rush." The silence between them tightened. Isadora walked toward the linen closet, carefully keeping distance, eyes on the floor. She reached the cabinet, opened it, began stacking the towels in neat, precise folds. Celeste watched. Every move. Every breath. "Why are you still working this late?" she asked. Isadora didn't turn around. "I couldn't sleep." "Because of me?" A pause. Then, yes. Celeste took a slow step forward. "Why?" "Because I don't know what you want from me." Isadora's voice cracked, just slightly. "One minute you're warm. The next I don't exist." Celeste said nothing. She approached slowly, her footsteps soundless against the polished floor. "It's not fair," Isadora added, softer now. "You make me feel things I don't know how to name, and then you vanish like they never happened." Celeste stopped just behind her. "I'm not used to wanting someone who doesn't belong to me." Isadora turned, eyes wide, breath caught in her throat. "I'm not something you can own." "I know," Celeste said, quieter. "That's the problem." Their eyes met in the half-light. And everything, weeks of tension, confusion, longing, hung there between them like glass on the verge of shattering. "Tell me to stop," Celeste said. Isadora didn't speak. "Tell me you don't feel it too." Still no answer. "Because if you don't," Celeste's voice broke off. She stepped forward. One hand lifted slowly, hesitantly, as if expecting rejection. Her fingers brushed a strand of hair from Isadora's cheek. Isadora closed her eyes. A soft, broken breath escaped her lips. "You make me feel like I'm on fire," she whispered. "And I've been cold for so long." That was all it took. Celeste moved before she could think. Her mouth found Isadora's in a kiss that wasn't slow or delicate. It was desperate.
Raw.
Their bodies collided in a storm of weeks' worth of restrained hunger. Isadora's hands clung to Celeste's robe. Celeste pulled her closer, like she was afraid she'd disappear. The kiss deepened. Their breaths tangled. And for a moment, the world vanished. No money, no power, no rules, just mouths and hands and fire. But then, Isadora pulled away, breathless, eyes wide with panic. I can't, she said, stepping back. This isn't what you kissed me back, Celeste said, her voice still thick with need. I didn't mean to, Isadora whispered. That's the point. Then what do you want from me? Celeste's voice sharpened, laced with emotion she couldn't hide anymore. I want you to stop making me feel like I'm wrong for wanting something real, Isadora snapped, voice suddenly fierce. I want to stop being scared that the moment you get bored, you'll treat me like the rest of your perfect, curated world, something pretty to put on a shelf and forget. The silence after that was brutal. Celeste took a slow step back. Isadora, no, the girl said, voice shaking. Don't say anything. Just please. Let me go. She turned and disappeared down the hallway, linen basket forgotten on the floor. Celeste stood there, pulse pounding, chest heaving, stunned by what she'd just seen, what she'd just done. She looked at the basket, the hallway, the closed door at the end. Her lips still burned with the kiss they shared. And yet the distance between them had never felt so sharp. For the first time, she didn't know how to fix it. And the worst part? She wasn't sure she deserved to. Celeste didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of her bed until morning, the skyline beyond her windows shifting from black to blue to gold, and still she hadn't moved. Her robe hung loosely from her shoulders, untouched whiskey on the nightstand, phone silenced, heart roaring in her chest. The kiss replayed in her mind in agonizing detail, the way Isadora had melted into her, the heat of her mouth, the way her hands had clung to Celeste like she needed her to breathe. And then the way she'd pulled away, eyes wide with fear, with shame, with something Celeste didn't know how to name. That look had undone her more than the kiss. It wasn't rejection. It was hurt. A kind of betrayal Celeste hadn't realized she was capable of. She didn't know how to feel about that. And worse, she didn't know how to fix it. She'd spent her life building walls tall enough to never have to apologize. She didn't know the language of remorse. But she wanted to learn it. For her. For Isadora. The hours crawled. Celeste didn't go to the office. Didn't check her emails. She showered in silence, dressed in black slacks and a blouse softer than her usual armor, and wandered the apartment like a ghost. The staff came and went. None dared speak to her. Isadora didn't appear. That was expected. Still, it stung. By afternoon, Celeste stood in the hallway outside the service quarters. She had never been there before. She stared at the door for a full minute, hand hovering near the handle, before she turned away. She wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, she retreated to the library, the same chaise where it had all begun. She sat with a book she didn't read, staring at pages full of words that couldn't quiet her thoughts. Hours passed. Then footsteps. Barely audible. Hesitant. The door opened slowly. Celeste didn't look up. She didn't have to. She felt her. Isadora stood in the doorway, hair pulled back, sleeves rolled up, hands tucked in front of her like she was bracing herself for a storm. I came to clean, she said, voice tight. Do you want me to come back later? Celeste closed the book, set it aside, looked up. Her voice came quieter than she expected.
No.
Stay. Isadora stepped in, eyes lowered, avoiding Celeste entirely. She moved to the shelves and began dusting in silence. The air was thick, almost unbearable. You didn't come yesterday, Celeste said. Isadora's hands paused, then resumed. I needed space. And today, I almost didn't come. Why did you? A long pause. Then, because I didn't want you to think I was afraid of you. Celeste stood, crossed the room slowly. She didn't come close, just enough to feel the weight of presence settle between them again. You are, she said softly. Aren't you? Isadora lowered the cloth in her hands. Turned. I'm afraid of what I feel when I'm near you. Celeste exhaled. Me too. That stopped everything. The tension in Isadora's shoulders shifted, less rigid now, but no less uncertain. Why did you kiss me? Because I forgot how to lie to myself. And after? I panicked. You always do that. Only with people who matter. Isadora's throat moved as she swallowed. I can't do this if it's going to break me. Then I'll learn how not to. Celeste stepped closer. Not enough to touch, but enough that their breath tangled again. Tell me what you want. I don't know, Isadora whispered. But I know I can't be just another secret in your life. Celeste's expression softened in a way few had ever seen. Then be the first thing I don't hide. Silence again. This time heavier, but not suffocating. Isadora looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time since the kiss, her gaze didn't flinch. You scare me, she said. Because you see me? No, Isadora replied. Because I see you too. Celeste didn't speak. Couldn't. Instead, she walked past Isadora and opened a drawer on her desk. Pulled out a thin leather case. She turned and handed it to her. Isadora hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a photo. Celeste, years younger, smiling with a woman who looked like her. Same eyes. Same mouth. Isadora glanced up. Your mother? Celeste nodded. She was softer than me. Better. You look like her. I used to think that was a curse. And now I wonder if it's the only part of me that might be worth saving. Isadora blinked. Her fingers brushed the edge of the photo gently, like she was afraid to damage it. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand that I was someone once, before the world taught me how to hide it. Isadora closed the case, held it to her chest. I believe you. Celeste let out a shaky breath, a sound she didn't know she was holding. Will you have dinner with me tonight? The question was simple. Honest. No games. Isadora's eyes widened slightly. Here. No, Celeste smiled.
Soft.
Tentative.
Out.
Somewhere real. Somewhere we're just two women sharing a table, not a billionaire and her maid. Isadora hesitated. People will see. Let them. Are you ready for that? No, Celeste said. But I want to be. Isadora stared at her. And in that moment, something shifted again. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But like a window opening just enough to let the light in. Then yes, she whispered. I'll have dinner with you. Celeste smiled. Not the public smile she wore in meetings. Not the one that made reporters tremble. This one was real. Unpolished. And Isadora looked at her like she'd just witnessed the rarest thing in the world. That night, Celeste stood in front of the mirror, buttoning a silk blouse, heart beating faster than it had in years. She wasn't afraid of the city, or the cameras, or the whispers. She was afraid of the girl walking beside her, and what it might mean to finally let herself be seen. The restaurant Celeste chose wasn't the kind of place you'd expect from a woman who dined with diplomats and oil tycoons. It was small, tucked away in the West Village, with ivy curling around the entrance and candlelight dancing behind the windows. The name was carved in wood with no neon sign, no glamour, just the soft, understated elegance of somewhere that didn't need to prove itself. She hadn't been there in years. Not since before the boardroom became her home. Not since before she became the version of herself the world demanded. But tonight wasn't about the world. Tonight was about unlearning. Celeste arrived first, 10 minutes early. That never happened. She sat by the corner table, half hidden by a low wall of plants, dressed in dark blue silk and a blazer that made her look powerful and strangely exposed all at once. She kept glancing at the door, sipping slowly from a glass of red wine she barely tasted. And then there she was. Isadora stepped in with wide eyes, wrapped in a simple black coat. Her hair was down. A soft wave curled around her jaw. Her dress was navy and modest, but the way she wore it made the room go still for a second. Not because she was trying to be noticed, but because she didn't realize how breathtaking she was. Celeste stood. Something she never did. Isadora approached slowly. You look, Celeste stopped herself, then smiled, small and honest. Beautiful. Isadora flushed, her hands tightening slightly around the strap of her bag. I wasn't sure what to wear. You wore exactly the right thing. They sat, and for a few minutes, neither knew what to say. The waiter brought water. Celeste ordered for both of them, not out of control, but because Isadora looked too overwhelmed to speak. She remembered that feeling. She didn't want her to feel small tonight. This place is quiet, Isadora said finally. I thought you'd take me somewhere with press. If I wanted attention, I wouldn't have invited you. I wanted this. What is this? Something real, Celeste said. And for once, she didn't second-guess it. The food came. Conversation trickled in. Awkward at first. Weather, music, books. But slowly, warmth replaced stiffness. Celeste learned that Isadora had grown up in a one-bedroom apartment with two siblings, that she used to sing before her voice changed after her mother died. That she once dreamed of being a teacher, before bills and grief and life taught her how to disappear. And Isadora learned that Celeste once played cello competitively. That she spent 3 years in Paris trying to outrun her father's shadow. That she still called her therapist once a week, but never admitted it to anyone. Why me? Isadora asked, her voice quieter now. The main course finished. You could be with anyone. Someone confident.
Polished.
Like you. Celeste stirred her wine slowly. That's the problem. I don't want someone like me. Why not? Because I don't want to feel like a mirror anymore. I want something that reminds me I'm alive. Is that what I do? Celeste looked at her. The candlelight flickered between them.
Yes.
You do. The words hung there, heavier than silence. Isadora looked down. I've never had a real relationship, she said. Not one where I was seen. Then let this be the first. I'm scared. So am I. Celeste reached across the table, slowly. Her fingers brushed over Isadora's, then rested there. The contact was soft, intentional, intimate. Isadora looked up. Their hands didn't move. And in that moment, they weren't CEO and Maid. They weren't Billionaire and nobody. They were just two women sharing something terrifyingly real. Dance with me, Celeste said suddenly. Here. Isadora blinked. There's no music. Does it matter? Celeste stood, holding her hand out. And without quite understanding why, Isadora took it. They moved to a quiet corner, away from other guests, near a tall window. Celeste placed one hand gently at Isadora's waist, the other holding hers. And together, they began to move.
Slowly.
Almost still. There was no rhythm, just breath and heartbeat. The world outside the window spun by, cars and people and noise. But inside that small restaurant, they existed in a moment that didn't belong to anyone else. You're trembling, Celeste murmured. So are you. Are you going to run again? Not tonight. Celeste leaned in, their foreheads nearly touching. Her hand curled slightly against the back of Isadora's dress. If I kiss you here, it won't be something I regret. Isadora's breath caught. Then do it.
Celeste did.
This kiss was different. Not rushed. Not desperate. It was slow. Intentional. The kind of kiss that asked a question and answered it at the same time. And for a few seconds it felt like maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something that survived outside the dark. But then, Celeste's phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, with a reluctant breath, she pulled away and answered. Wexler. Her face changed immediately. What?
Pause.
No, I didn't approve that. Who signed off on? Her voice sharpened. The old Celeste snapped back into place like armor. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up, turned to Isadora, regret already in her eyes. I'm so sorry. Work. A board crisis. One of the directors acted without clearance. It's serious. Go, Isadora said. I understand. Celeste wanted to say more,
But she didn't know how.
so she reached out, brushed her thumb across Isadora's cheek, and whispered, Don't let this scare you away. And then she left, heels clicking against the tile, disappearing back into the world she'd built to survive. Isadora stood alone in the corner, her lips still tingling, her hands still warm. And for the first time since meeting Celeste, she wasn't afraid of what she felt. She was afraid of what might come between them. Celeste didn't sleep the night of the dinner. She returned to her office before dawn, sat at the head of the boardroom table with her blazer still smelling faintly of Isadora's perfume, and tore through spreadsheets and legal documents like they were enemies she could conquer. Her name was on a contract she hadn't approved, an acquisition with ethical red flags, a mess created by a reckless board member eager for personal gain. It was public by morning. Headlines. Whispers. Pressure. Her legal team needed statements. Her PR team wanted damage control. She'd spent years building Wexler Industries into something feared, respected, untouchable. Now the cracks were showing. And for the first time, Celeste didn't care about the empire. Not fully.
Not like she used to.
All she could think about was a girl in a navy dress, standing alone in a candlelit restaurant, lips still warm from a kiss that didn't get to finish what it started. She hated that she'd left. Hated even more that she hadn't fought harder to stay. But responsibility had always come first. It was the only thing that ever kept her upright. By the time she returned to the penthouse, the sky was beginning to bruise with dusk. Her body ached.
Her voice was raw.
She wanted to see Isadora. She needed to see her. But the apartment was still. She walked the halls, checked the kitchen, the terrace, the library. Nothing. She buzzed the service room. No answer. Finally, she called Marisol. "Where's Isadora?" The chef hesitated on the other end. "She didn't come in today." Celeste's throat tightened. "Did she call in sick?" "She said she needed the day off." "Did she say why?"
No.
But she sounded upset. Celeste ended the call without another word. She stood in the middle of the marble-floored hallway, surrounded by silence, and felt something sharp twist in her gut. Was it the way she'd left? Had it confirmed Isadora's worst fear, that she was just a moment of softness in a world that didn't allow Celeste to be soft? That she would always choose power over vulnerability? She wanted to call, text, drive to wherever Isadora was, and force her to listen. But what would she even say? That she missed her? That the day felt wrong without hearing her voice echo off the library walls? That every time someone mentioned damage control, all she could think about was the damage she might have done to something infinitely more fragile than her empire? She poured herself a drink and left it untouched. Then, another buzz at her phone. This time, not work. A message. From Isadora. One line. "I need time. Please don't look for me today." Celeste's chest caved in. She stared at the message for so long the screen dimmed. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Go to her. Fix it. Control the outcome. But hadn't that always been the problem? She exhaled and set the phone down without replying. That night, the penthouse was too big. Too quiet. The city lights mocked her. And the whiskey finally went down like regret. Isadora, for her part, hadn't left her tiny apartment since returning home. She'd peeled off the dress with shaking hands, folded it too gently, and stared at it like it held all the answers she didn't know how to ask. The kiss hadn't scared her. It had destroyed her defenses. It had felt like the first time she was truly touched. Not just skin to skin, but heart to heart. And then Celeste left. Just like she feared she would. Just like everyone else eventually did. But what haunted her more than the leaving was the look in Celeste's eyes before she walked out, like she was begging her not to be afraid. And Isadora had failed her. She wasn't angry, just hurt, torn between the gravity pulling her toward Celeste and the instinct to protect what little she had left of herself. She spent the day pacing, holding her phone, typing a dozen messages, and deleting them. At night, she finally sent one. "I need time." Not because she didn't want her, but because she wanted her too much and didn't know how to survive it. The next morning, Celeste waited. She didn't go to work. She didn't move. She sat by the window like a shadow, waiting for a knock that never came. Noon passed. 3 o'clock. Sunset. Nothing. Until footsteps.
Light.
Familiar. Celeste rose slowly. The front door opened. And there she was. Isadora. Still in her coat. hair damp from the misting rain outside. Her face pale, but eyes steady. "I came back," she said softly. Celeste didn't move. "Why?" "Because staying away hurt more." Celeste swallowed. "Are you angry?"
No.
"I'm terrified. Of me. Of this."
She took a breath.
"But I don't want to walk away from it." Celeste stepped forward. "Then don't." "But I need to know something first." "Anything." "If I fall into this, will you catch me, or will you let me hit the ground?" Celeste didn't speak. She stepped closer, gently took Isadora's hand, pressed it to her own chest. "I'm falling too," she whispered. "Maybe we catch each other." The air shifted. The silence between them wasn't silence anymore. It was understanding. It was invitation. But before either could speak again, the elevator chimed. A second later, the doors slid open. A man in a suit stepped out. One of the board directors. "Celeste," he said, stiff and cold. "We need to talk. Privately." Celeste's body stiffened. She turned to Isadora. "Wait for me." But Isadora was already stepping back. Her eyes dimmed, not from jealousy, but from the cruel reminder of the world Celeste came from. The one that always interrupted them. The one that might not make room for a girl like her. "I'll be in the library," she said. "If you want me." And then she disappeared again, soft as a ghost. Celeste stood there, torn in two. Behind her, the business she built was beginning to burn. And ahead of her, the woman who made her feel alive was slipping away with every second she hesitated. The boardroom had never felt smaller. Celeste sat at the head of the long obsidian table, her posture sharp, chin lifted, every inch the woman she'd spent a lifetime perfecting. Around her sat 7 men and 3 women, power brokers, investors, partners, vultures. They looked at her like she was both queen and liability. "We've contained most of the media fallout," said Langford, the director who had overridden her signature on the acquisition. "But there are whispers, Celeste."
Headlines.
"You know how perception works." "Yes," she said coolly. "I built my career on it." "Then you understand why we need to show strength, stability, and no distractions." The word hit harder than he realized. Distractions. Celeste's jaw clenched. "Is that what you think this is?" "There are photos," another board member said carefully, "of you, at that restaurant, holding hands, dancing, with a maid, Celeste. You gave them a story." "I gave them a fraction of my life," she snapped. "They built the rest." "It's not about her," Langford said. "It's about you. Your judgment. Your timing. You left during a crisis." "For what?" Celeste stood slowly. "Be very careful how you finish that sentence." The room fell silent. Celeste's voice was ice. "If any of you believe my leadership is in question because I took one night to be human, then I suggest you reconsider who you're dealing with." She walked out before they could respond. She didn't need their approval. Not tonight. She needed air. And a glimpse of the only person who made her feel like more than her title. She took the elevator up, blood pounding, heart a storm beneath her ribs. But when the doors opened to the penthouse, Isadora wasn't there. The library was empty. The kitchen dark. The terrace still. Panic bloomed before she could stop it. She called her. Voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. Finally, on the kitchen counter, she saw it, Isadora's name badge. Folded neatly. Placed beside a short note. "I don't belong in your world. And I can't keep pretending I do. I'm sorry." Celeste stared at the paper, the words dissolving as her mind raced to make sense of it. Her body went cold. Her chest tightened.
No.
Not like this. Not now. She grabbed her coat. Left everything behind. Traffic blurred past as her driver cut through the city. She didn't know where she was going. Just that she had to find her. She tried Marisol. No one had seen her. Tried her assistant. Checked security footage. Isadora had left just 30 minutes ago. No suitcase. Just her coat. Celeste didn't wait. She called the only place she knew Isadora might go, home. A tiny walk-up on the Lower East Side. 10 minutes later, she was outside, rain beginning to spit from a heavy sky. The building was dim. She buzzed. No answer. She buzzed again. And again. Then finally footsteps. The door opened. Isadora stood in the hallway, coat still on, hair loose, her eyes red but defiant. You shouldn't be here. And yet here I am. It's too late, Celeste. Don't you dare say that. You left. For 1 hour. To keep the company I built from crumbling. And I was left standing there, wondering if I was always going to be second. You're not second. Then why did it feel like I was? Celeste stepped inside, closed the door behind her. The hallway was narrow. Their bodies were too close. Their pain even closer. Because I didn't know how to choose you, Celeste said, voice cracking. Not without sacrificing everything I've been told I have to protect. And what about what I'm protecting? Isadora whispered. My heart. My dignity. The last sliver of self-worth I've held onto after years of being invisible. Celeste's voice softened. You were never invisible to me. Then why do I feel like I'm disappearing again? Celeste reached for her, but Isadora pulled back. Don't. Not if you're going to walk away tomorrow. Celeste exhaled, defeated. I don't know how to do this. Neither do I. But I do know that I won't survive it if I'm the only one willing to fall. You're not, Celeste said. You never were. Then prove it. Silence.
Heavy. Sharp.
Celeste stepped back, pulled something from her pocket. A folded card. She handed it to Isadora. What is this? An invitation. To the company gala. Tomorrow night. I want you there. As my guest. Not as staff. Isadora looked at the card like it was made of fire. You take me there? I'll walk in with your hand in mine, Celeste said. And anyone who looks at you like you don't belong will answer to me. That's not how you fix this.
No.
But it's where we start. Isadora's hand trembled. What if they talk? Let them. What if it ruins your image? Then let it burn. Their eyes locked. For the first time, Celeste wasn't wearing armor. She was just a woman, asking not to be left behind. Isadora stepped closer, laid her hand against Celeste's cheek. If I go, it's not as a decoration. I know. It's as someone you choose. Every time. Every time, Celeste promised. They stood there, neither kissing, neither running, just breathing.
Just existing.
Together. But even as they held that fragile moment between them, they both knew tomorrow would be a battlefield. And the world wasn't kind to women who dared to want love and power in the same breath. The ballroom of the Langford Hotel glittered like something out of a fever dream, chandeliers dripping with crystal, marble floors polished to mirror-like gleam, servers gliding silently between tuxedos and silk gowns. It was the annual Wexler Industries Winter Gala, an event built on performance and power. For years, Celeste had attended as a symbol, unreachable, impeccable, the cold center of the room that no one dared approach unless summoned. But tonight, she didn't walk in alone. When the grand double doors opened and Celeste stepped inside, she wasn't holding a glass of champagne. She was holding Isadora's hand. A hush fell over the room. Not loud. Just enough to bend the air. Heads turned. Conversations stalled mid-sentence. The orchestra didn't falter, but the tension under the strings was palpable. Isadora walked at Celeste's side, her posture steady, her expression unreadable. She wore a midnight blue dress that fit her like a secret finally spoken, simple, elegant, and devastatingly beautiful. Her hair was swept up loosely, with strands falling around her cheeks. Her eyes were focused forward, but Celeste could feel the tremor in her fingers. She squeezed her hand. A quiet signal. I'm here. I'm not letting go. Cameras flashed. Phones clicked. The board members watched from across the room, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and strategic calculation. Langford's mouth tightened. Celeste didn't blink. She led Isadora down the marble steps, across the sea of whispers, and into the storm she had created with a single decision. They found their table, table 1, of course, and sat as if nothing about this night was unusual. But everything was. Isadora leaned slightly toward her, voice low. They're staring. Let them. This isn't a fair fight. Celeste turned to her, voice firm. We didn't come to fight. We came to exist. That's enough. For the first hour, the tension held. They sipped champagne, listened to speeches, pretended the weight of the room wasn't pressing down on them. But the pressure was real. People approached. Board members. Investors. Women in designer gowns with sharp smiles. Men with rehearsed charm. They greeted Celeste with the same plastic reverence as always, until their eyes drifted to Isadora. Then came the double takes. The forced pleasantries. The questions not so carefully disguised as daggers. And you are? Where did you two meet? I wasn't aware Ms. Wexler was seeing someone. Celeste didn't answer most of them. Her gaze was ice. But Isadora answered one. A woman in silver asked, with a smirk too sharp to be polite. And what do you do, dear? Isadora smiled softly. I make her remember who she is when no one's watching. The woman blinked, said nothing, walked away. Celeste turned slowly. You've been practicing that one? Maybe, Isadora said, eyes dancing with quiet rebellion. Celeste felt herself exhale for the first time all night. Then the music shifted. A waltz. Elegant. Intimate. Celeste stood and offered her hand. Dance with me. Are you sure? I've never been more sure. Isadora hesitated only a second, then rose and followed her onto the floor. They moved together, slowly, a rhythm as natural as breath. The room watched. Whispers curled like smoke. But Celeste didn't look at anyone else. Her eyes were on Isadora. Her hand rested at her waist like she belonged there. Do you regret it yet? Isadora asked softly. Bringing me here? I regret not doing it sooner. Even if it costs you everything? Celeste leaned closer. Her lips brushed Isadora's ear. You're the only thing I've ever wanted that wasn't about winning. The dance continued. Around them, the world kept spinning, but inside that moment, they were still. Safe.
Seen.
But peace never lasts long in places built on control. As the music faded, Langford approached. Celeste, he said, voice clipped. A word. She turned. If it's about optics, save it. It's about your father. The name hit like a slap. Celeste's spine straightened. What about him? He's coming. Tonight. He was invited weeks ago. You know what he's like. If he sees this, Langford glanced at Isadora. It'll be blood. Isadora's fingers tensed in Celeste's hand. Celeste stepped between them. Let him come. He could pull his shares. Then let him burn them. This isn't just about you anymore. No, Celeste said. It's about what I'm willing to protect. Langford sighed. You always were stubborn. And you always were afraid of the wrong people. He walked away. Celeste turned back to Isadora. You don't have to stay. I'm not leaving you, Isadora whispered. Not again. And then another hush. A different one.
Deeper.
Like the air itself recoiled. Celeste turned toward the entrance. And there he was. Daniel Wexler. Her father. The man who taught her how to build a kingdom and fear its fall in the same breath. His eyes locked onto hers from across the room. Then to Isadora. And he began to walk. Every step was thunder. Every guest leaned back slightly, sensing war in the air. Celeste felt her pulse steady. She squeezed Isadora's hand one last time, then stepped forward. Alone. She met her father halfway. They didn't speak. For 5 seconds, they simply stared at each other. Then he said, You're going to destroy everything I built. Celeste didn't flinch. Maybe it's time. For what? For something real. That girl is mine, Celeste cut in, her voice steel. And if this empire can't survive her presence, then it never deserved to exist. Her father stared at her, then laughed once.
Cold. Short.
You're weak. No, Celeste said, stepping back toward Isadora. I'm finally strong enough to choose something that isn't fear. And then she kissed her. In the center of the ballroom. In front of cameras. Board members. Investors. And her father. She kissed her like it was a beginning. like it was the answer to every version of herself she'd spent a lifetime hiding. The crowd didn't know what to do. Some gasped. Some stared. But Celeste didn't see them. She only saw the girl in her arms. And the world didn't matter anymore. The kiss made headlines before they even left the ballroom. Photos flooded social media, grainy shots, high-definition captures, dramatic angles of Celeste Wexler, the ice queen of American industry, kissing an unknown woman in the middle of her company's most prestigious gala. The word "Maid" appeared in captions like a scarlet letter. The tabloids spun it like a scandal. The business outlets called it a distraction. And the people who hated powerful women finally had a weakness to cling to. By morning, the news cycle had exploded. Celeste's face was on every screen. Not for a merger. Not for a new innovation. But for a kiss. For loving someone the world didn't believe she should. She stood in the glass tower of her office, facing the skyline she used to command without question. Her assistant handed her the morning's press packet, 10 pages thick. "Do you want the damage report?" Celeste didn't turn around. Just the truth. Stocks dipped 4 points. 2 partners are stalling negotiations. The board is holding an emergency session tonight. And the gossip? You're trending. For how long? Depends on what you do next. Celeste exhaled. Cancel all meetings. No statements. No apologies. Her assistant hesitated. "Celeste, you might be losing them. Then let them go." When the assistant left, Celeste turned her phone face up. A message from Isadora. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. She didn't know what okay meant anymore. Downstairs, Isadora sat on the edge of the bed in Celeste's penthouse guest room, holding her own phone like it might combust. Her name wasn't in the headlines, not directly. But she was everywhere, blurred in the background, dissected in forums, judged by people who didn't know her name, her story, or her heart. She had already received dozens of messages. Some cruel, some invasive. One from a cousin she hadn't spoken to in years, asking if the rumors were true. And now she was here, in this place that didn't feel like hers, trying not to unravel. When Celeste finally entered the room hours later, she didn't say anything. She looked exhausted. Her blazer was off. Her voice was barely holding. "I didn't think it would hit this hard this fast," she said. "I did," Isadora replied softly. "That's why I tried to walk away." "Don't say that." Celeste sat beside her. "I would do it again. Even if it costs you your company?" "It might." "And your father?" "He already made his choice." Isadora looked down.
"And me?"
"What if I can't handle this?" Celeste didn't flinch. "Then you walk. I won't stop you. But I'll fight like hell to give you a reason to stay. You shouldn't have to fight that hard just to love someone. You don't know what the world does to women like me. Women like us. They tolerate us if we stay quiet. They parade us if we're performative. But the moment we make them uncomfortable, they strike. And you made them uncomfortable."
"Good."
Isadora turned to her. "You always sound so certain." "I'm not. Not with you. That's how I know it's real." Celeste reached for her hand. Isadora let her. But there was tension in the gesture now, love tangled in fear. "If this gets worse," Isadora said, "I need to know something. Anything. That I'm not your rebellion. That I'm not your way of proving a point to the world, or to him." Celeste's breath caught. "You're not a rebellion. You're my gravity." The words hit too deep. Too fast. Isadora leaned forward, forehead pressed to Celeste's shoulder, and breathed out a shaky exhale she hadn't realized she'd been holding all day. "I'm trying," she whispered. "So am I." The moment held.
"For a while."
Until Celeste's phone rang again. This time she answered.
"Short. Cold."
"Understood." She hung up. Isadora looked at her. "What is it?" "The board's meeting was moved up. They want to vote in 2 hours. About my leadership." "Are you going?" "Yes." "Alone?" Celeste stood. Straightened her shoulders. "Not if you'll come with me." Isadora blinked.
"What?"
"I want you to walk into that building with me. Let them see that I'm not hiding. That we're not ashamed. You don't have to prove anything. I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for me. For you. For us. Isadora hesitated. They'll devour me. Then let them choke. The fire in Celeste's eyes was calm now.
Certain.
But Isadora's chest ached. Because this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about survival. And the higher they climbed, the sharper the knives beneath them became. I'll go, she said finally. But promise me one thing. Anything. If they try to destroy you, don't let me be the reason you fall. Celeste stepped closer. Pressed their foreheads together. You're the only reason I'm standing. And then, before either could change their mind, they left. Together. Stepping out into a world already armed with judgment. And the storm was just beginning. The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent. Celeste stood with her shoulders back, her face unreadable, dressed in sleek black tailored lines that made her look like she was carved from control itself. Beside her, Isadora held her breath, fingers laced with Celeste's, palms slightly damp. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. The doors opened. Every head turned. Celeste didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, still holding Isadora's hand, and walked into the lion's den. The boardroom buzzed with tension. The long table was full, 11 members in crisp suits, a few legal advisors on the perimeter, and her father, Daniel Wexler, seated at the far end, hands folded over a folder thick with documentation that reeked of war. A chair had been placed for Celeste. None for Isadora. Celeste didn't sit. I assume we're ready? We are, Langford said, standing slowly. But if your guests would prefer to wait outside, she stays, Celeste replied. She doesn't speak for the company, another member snapped. Then let her speak for me, Celeste said, her voice calm but razor-sharp. Silence. Daniel leaned forward. You're turning this into a circus. No, Celeste said, locking eyes with him. I'm turning this into a reckoning. Celeste, if we're here to discuss business, let's do it. If we're here to discuss my personal life, then let's stop pretending this is about ethics and admit it's about your discomfort. A few of the younger members shifted in their seats. Langford cleared his throat. You've compromised your public image, distracted from the current acquisition disaster, and damaged investor trust with your behavior. My behavior? She asked, one brow arched. You mean falling in love with someone the world deems unworthy? Murmurs. Tension. Isadora's grip on her hand tightened. No one said that, someone muttered. Then say what you mean, Celeste said. Is this about professionalism? Or is it about respectability politics dressed in a tailored suit? This isn't personal, Langford said. It is now, Celeste replied. She let go of Isadora's hand and finally Saturday, so vote. If that's what you came to do. But let's be clear, if you remove me from my position because of who I love, then you've made this company a monument to cowardice. Silence stretched like a blade. Then Daniel Wexler stood. I built this company from nothing, he said. I handed it to you because I believed you could carry it. But this is weakness. You let your emotions cost you power, reputation, control. You mean I stopped performing a version of myself that made you comfortable, Celeste said.
No.
I became more than you ever taught me to be. She's using you, Daniel said, gesturing toward Isadora. Don't be naive. Isadora stepped forward. Her voice was steady. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't chase cameras or sign NDAs. I didn't ask to be dragged through headlines. I fell in love with a woman who made me feel seen for the first time in my life. If that makes me a threat to your empire, then maybe it wasn't built on anything real. Every eye turned to her. But she didn't flinch. She met their gaze like someone who had nothing to prove and everything to protect. Celeste stood again. I'm not ashamed of her. And I won't apologize for making a choice with my heart instead of my balance sheet. If that costs me this seat, then so be it. But understand this. Removing me will expose every hypocrisy this board is built on. And I won't go quietly. Langford looked pained. Celeste, don't do this. I already did. Another silence. Then Daniel tossed a document onto the table. Motion to remove Celeste Wexler as CEO of Wexler Industries effective immediately. citing breach of fiduciary duty and reputational compromise. Seconded, came another voice. Opposed. Celeste didn't look at Isadora.
She didn't need to.
3 hands raised. Then 4.
5.
But the 6th hesitated. A woman at the far end. She looked between Daniel and Celeste. Then slowly raised her hand in opposition. 6-6.
A tie.
Daniel's smirk returned. As chairman, I hold the tiebreaker. Not anymore, the woman said. You stepped down as chairman last quarter. Interim status expired last week. Daniel froze. Celeste blinked. The room exploded in whispers. Langford sighed. Then the vote stands at deadlock. Celeste stood. Then I remain CEO. Daniel turned, stormed out without a word. And the boardroom, for once, had nothing left to say. Outside, Isadora followed Celeste into the hallway, breath shallow. Did that just happen? Yes, Celeste said. Her hands were shaking. You stood up to him. You stood with me. What now? Isadora asked. Now, Celeste said, turning to her, voice trembling but full of fire. We don't hide. Ever again. And then her phone buzzed. A message from her PR team. Request for live interview. Network wants a statement. They'll go to press with or without you. Celeste looked at Isadora. You don't have to do this, Isadora said. But I want to, Celeste replied. I want the world to hear it from me. No shame. No disguise. Then I'll be watching, Isadora whispered. Every second. And as Celeste walked away toward the studio, the cameras, the firestorm waiting on the other side, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This love was no longer something to protect in silence. It was something to fight for in front of the world. The studio lights were blinding. Harsh. Designed to reveal, not conceal. Celeste sat in the center of it all, framed by cameras from 3 angles, her microphone clipped just below the collar of a charcoal blazer she hadn't worn since the day she took over the company. Her hands were still, folded in her lap. Her heart was not. It beat like a drum beneath silk and steel. Across from her sat the host, Dana Kress, a media veteran known for interviews that broke careers or immortalized them. Dana adjusted her glasses, shuffled her note cards, and looked up with a half-smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Live in 3-2, the red light on the main camera blinked on. Celeste exhaled once. Then silence. The world was watching. Good evening, Dana said. Tonight, we're joined by Celeste Wexler, CEO of Wexler Industries, at the center of a media firestorm that's taken over headlines across the country. Ms. Wexler, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me, Celeste replied, voice smooth but low. Let's begin with what everyone's talking about. The winter gala, the kiss, the photo, the woman.
Who is she to you?
Celeste didn't blink. She's someone I love. Dana tilted her head. And what do you say to the people who claim this was a reckless display? That it jeopardized your company's reputation, your leadership, your objectivity? I say those people are uncomfortable with a woman in power being vulnerable, being human, being real. So, it wasn't a publicity stunt? No, not a calculated distraction from the board's internal conflict? Absolutely not. Then what was it? Celeste looked into the lens. Not at Dana. Not at the cameras. At the millions of strangers watching. At one girl, sitting in a penthouse somewhere above the city, breath caught in her throat. It was the first honest moment I've had in years, Celeste said. I've built my career on precision, control, discipline. I knew how to win. I knew how to make people afraid. But I forgot how to let someone see me. Until her. Her name? Isadora. Dana blinked. That hadn't been in the pre-approved questions. And how did you meet? She worked in my home. So the rumors are true. You fell in love with a maid? No, Celeste said. I fell in love with a woman. A woman who saw through every mask I wore, who didn't care about my bank account, or my legacy, or my board of directors. A woman who spoke to me when I was pretending to be asleep, not knowing I could hear her. Who touched a part of me I thought had died. Dana shifted. There are people calling this inappropriate. a breach of power dynamics. I understand that concern, Celeste said, voice steady. Which is why I took every measure to ensure her employment was protected, her choices respected, and our relationship built on truth, not obligation. I didn't pursue her. I resisted what I felt for longer than I'm proud of. But love doesn't ask for permission. It demands courage. There was a pause. Dana tried to recenter. Are you concerned about investor response? If investors pull out because I chose honesty over fear, then they were never investing in the right company to begin with. Do you believe your company can survive this? I believe the truth survives everything. Dana studied her. You're remarkably calm. I'm terrified, Celeste admitted. But not of them. Not of you. I'm terrified of going back to the person I was before her. And who are you? Celeste's gaze darkened. Just for a moment. Someone who mistook power for protection. And silence for strength. Dana leaned in slightly. Final question, Ms. Wexler. What happens next? Celeste smiled softly. I go home. And if I'm lucky, she's still there. The camera light went off. The silence in the studio was deafening. Dana sat back slowly. That was the most dangerous interview I've ever seen. Good, Celeste said, standing. It was meant to be. Isadora sat frozen in the guest room, tears pooling in her eyes, phone still vibrating with texts and social media pings and everything in between. But all she could hear were the words, I fell in love with a woman. Isadora. She saw through every mask I wore. Her heart was trembling. Her hands pressed to her chest like she could hold the pieces together. Celeste had done it. She'd burned the lie to the ground. No more hiding. No more pretending. No more if, or maybe, or when the world is ready. She had chosen her. In front of everyone. And all Isadora could do was stand up, find her shoes, and run. The elevator dinged. Celeste stepped into the lobby of her building, coat slung over her arm. Makeup slightly faded, but gaze still bright with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She didn't expect anyone to be there. But when the elevator doors opened on the 83rd floor, Isadora was waiting. No gown. No camera-ready hair. Just her. Flushed, breathless, eyes wide with disbelief and devotion. I saw it, she said. I figured, Celeste replied, voice quieter now. You meant it. Every word. Even the part about going home? Celeste stepped forward, one hand brushing Isadora's cheek, thumb trembling against skin that felt more like home than the walls surrounding them. Only if you're still here. Isadora nodded once. I'm not going anywhere. Celeste leaned in. This kiss wasn't desperate. It wasn't for show. It was an answer. A promise.
A vow.
When they pulled apart, Isadora whispered, They'll still come for you. Celeste smiled. Let them try. I already have everything I ever wanted. But even as she held her, something loomed in the silence. A message unread. A threat forming. The world might have watched them fall in love, but it hadn't finished deciding what to do with that love yet. For 3 days after the interview, the world spun. Not out of control, but into focus. The headlines didn't stop. Neither did the speculation, the judgment, the admiration, or the outrage. Some investors pulled out. Others doubled down. Anonymous opinion pieces flooded the business journals, some defending Celeste Wexler as a visionary redefining power, others damning her as reckless, unprofessional, emotional. But Celeste didn't respond to any of them. She had already said everything she needed to. Once.
Publicly.
Unapologetically. And for the first time in her life, she didn't care who stayed or left in the aftermath. Because the only person she needed beside her was still there. Isadora didn't leave the penthouse. Not because she was hiding, but because she was rebuilding. Inside herself. Around herself. After a lifetime of being small, she was slowly learning how to take up space in a world that never made room for people like her. Every day, she and Celeste fell into a rhythm that had nothing to do with power or structure. Coffee in silence. Shared books. Laughter between the walls that used to echo only with quiet. No staff. No roles. No barriers. Just them. The board voted a second time, this time not to remove Celeste, but to restructure leadership.
She stepped down as CEO.
Not because she lost, but because she was done performing invincibility for men who measured leadership by how well she mimicked them. The world gasped. She didn't flinch. She remained on the board, still a majority shareholder, still the power behind the glass, but now free to shape her life from the inside out. Do you regret it? Isadora asked one night, curled against her on the terrace, blanket around their shoulders as the city blinked below them. No, Celeste said, without hesitation. I regret how long it took me to do it, but not what it cost. Even if it cost everything? Celeste turned to her. It didn't cost everything. It gave me something real.
Us.
You. She kissed her forehead.
Soft. Certain.
And for the first time, Isadora believed she wasn't dreaming. Weeks passed. The noise died down. New scandals replaced old ones. The world moved on, as it always does. But inside the penthouse, something stayed. Something built slowly, honestly, without the need to perform.
Love.
The kind that didn't need grand gestures anymore. Just presence. Just truth. Isadora began painting again. Celeste started playing the cello. They made dinner together. Badly, laughing through every burn attempt. They made love slowly, without urgency, as if there were no time to outrun. And one morning, Celeste brought coffee to bed, sat beside Isadora, and placed a small velvet box on the blanket. You're not proposing, Isadora said, heart slamming. No, Celeste replied. Not yet. Not until you ask me to. This isn't a ring. It's a key. Isadora blinked. To what? To this life. To this home.
To me.
She opened the box. Inside wasn't gold or diamonds. Just a single silver key on a thin chain. Isadora reached out slowly. Touched it. You want me to move in? I want you to believe this place is just as much yours as mine. I want you to stop knocking on doors that were always meant to open for you. Tears pooled in Isadora's eyes. I don't know how to be this brave every day. Then we'll take turns, Celeste said, voice quiet. I'll be brave for both of us until you feel ready. Isadora didn't speak. She just leaned forward, pressed her forehead to Celeste's, and whispered, Then I'm staying. I'm not leaving again. And that was enough. That night, they didn't go out. They didn't pose. They didn't perform. They danced barefoot in the kitchen to an old jazz record, laughing at their own clumsiness, wrapped in something warmer than any fire. And in the days that followed, they kept choosing each other. Every morning, every argument, every moment of silence. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. A year later, the press still remembered them. Not as a scandal, but as a turning point. Celeste Wexler had become a symbol, not of controversy, but of evolution. And Isadora? She was no longer the maid. She was a writer now. A voice that told stories of softness surviving power, of love surviving expectation, of women surviving the myth that they must choose between desire and dignity. In the end, the world didn't ruin them. It revealed them, and they weren't afraid anymore. The final shot was this. 2 women on a rooftop at dusk. One barefoot, one in heels, holding hands, facing the horizon. Quiet,
Whole.
unshakable, together. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.